proceed with Professor Tatiana Marina from the Moscow State Linguistic University in Russia, who will be speaking about culture-specific communicative styles and language pedagogy with reference to Russian speakers of English as a foreign language.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I'd like to say that it's my great pleasure to be here at Portsmouth University to participate in this most interesting conference and to represent our network. So in my presentation, let me draw your attention back to the problems which were pointed out by Svetlana concerning the problem of intercultural communication and in development of intercultural communicative competence. I hope that the title of my presentation gives a clear idea of what I'm going to talk about. So I'll start with the importance of anthropological approach in language teaching, then illustrate some problems of understanding, misunderstanding in the Russian-English dialogue, then give the definition of culture-specific communication style, outline some parameters of its description, and specify some moments of its application in language pedagogy, precisely in teaching English to Russian students. So, first of all, I would like to say that the modern period of the development of linguistics is rightly called the age of macrolinguistics. It is characterized by the fact that language is seen as an integral structure in its numerous relations and functions, in its relation to different spheres of social, material, and spiritual life. An evidence of this is the formation of complex disciplines such as sociolinguistics, ethno-psycholinguistics, cognitive linguistics, and others. It's also worth noting that the shifting of language into other areas of study, which at first glance seem far removed from its area of research, paradoxically come close to the language, giving an opportunity to the researcher to study it from different angles and expose its new qualities. Moreover, there are areas where language and its use can't be studied except in a very close relationship with the knowledge that other areas of science give us. And this sphere is the sphere of intercultural, interpersonal communication, which in the past 2 or 3 decades has become the object of observation and study of various scientific disciplines. This fact is not accidental because the study of ethnic and cultural specificity of communication can be carried out effectively only at an interdisciplinary level in the framework of anthropocentric parenting. These days, an anthropocentric approach is very necessary in the teaching of foreign languages as well, because the purpose of teaching now is not to create a second language speaker as it used to be, but an intercultural communicator, because linguistic ability is not limited only to the acquisition of verbal language skills, but goes beyond to intercultural communicative competence, which presupposes the ability to successfully interact with people from another country and culture in a foreign language. Thus, among the priorities of a foreign language teacher, the following objectives need to be met. So we should equip the students with the knowledge of cultural differences in worldview, cultural values and attitudes, in social relations, in understanding of politeness and impoliteness and communicative norms and so on, to help them to create bridges from one cognitive system to another, to be able to understand their other culture interlocutor, to teach how to properly interpret the behavior of the interlocutor of another culture, and to act in accordance to this culture's communicative traditions, and so thus to develop cross-cultural pragmatic competence, which is an integral part of cross-cultural communicative competence. The pragmatic level is very important in second language acquisition, as a communicative breakdown in intercultural interaction is often caused by misunderstanding. Jenny Thomas defines such communicative failure as pragmatic failure, cross-cultural pragmatic failure, which it describes as the inability to understand what is meant by what is said by the speaker from another country. Distinguishing between, and this kind of failures should be in the focus of second language teaching, as it is an area in which cross-cultural communication might have some problems. Distinguishing between grammatical errors and pragmatic failures, she knows that pragmatic failures are attributed to the native speaker, as you can see here. So grammatic error may reveal a speaker to be less than proficient language user, but pragmatic failure reflects badly on him or her as a person. And such failures can be at the root of unhelpful and offensive national stereotyping, including a stereotype about the abrasive Russians, for example. She notes that while having an excellent linguistic command of in the English language, Russians are often unwillingly appear discourteous and domineering. And she has well-grounded reasons for this claim, because it's true that Russians are often perceived by Westerners, especially by the British people, as impolite, since they may feel free to ask private questions, they like to give advice, even unasked, may interfere into personal conversation, they prefer to express their opinions as well as their communicative intentions directly, and they feel free to use imperatives and so on. But from the Russian point of view, such conduct in many contexts can be quite acceptable and is not considered as impoliteness. It's necessary to note also that, on the other hand, English politeness is not always assessed by Russians in a positive way. English people are often perceived by Russians as over-polite, which is not so good in Russian culture. Ceremonious, distant, cold, insincere, and hypocritical. So this suggests that besides the linguistic level of proficiency, it is necessary to inculcate in the learners the culture-specific level of language functioning, which is determined by the national specificities of that language. I have a really fascinating collection of communicative breakdowns based on this pragmatic misunderstanding, taken from real Russian English and English Russian dialogues. Let me just, to illustrate, choose one of it. Yeah, I like this example very much because it's a real situation of kind of communicative conflict which a student of mine witnessed. So it was in Houston, in America, where a Russian cosmonaut, during his training course in Houston, had a conflict with his English teacher, who was not happy with his behavior and almost refused to teach him. When the interpreter tried to sort out the problem, the Russian specimen assured him that he did not mean to hurt his teacher and added, "Actually, she is a bit strange. Yesterday, for example, she asked me whether I would like to write the exercise. I just said, no, let's do it orally," which suddenly got offended. What we can see here that the problem was not in understanding the language, the semantics of the utterance, but it's pragmatic. The English teacher saying, "Would you like to read?" She just was asking the student to read. So the pragmatic meaning was just read it. And how was it interpreted by the Russian student? He thought, she's asking me whether I would like to read or not, but I can say no if I do not want to read. So what's the problem? And his misunderstanding is absolutely logical, because in the Russian context, in this situation, the teacher gives direct instructions. So it also may be indirect, but when there is an option, real option. When there is no option, yeah, in the Russian context, it's normal to say directly. So the Russian teacher would say, "Read, please." So читай, пожалуйста, in Russian. Yeah, what the Russian teacher means the same. I'm asking the student to read. Yeah, how make the British student understand? She's very strict and demanding, and of course, impolite. So what we can see here in these examples, and they are numerous in different situations, in different speech acts. Just I don't have time. It will be might be really very entertaining. I just want to emphasize the fact that misunderstanding in intercultural communication stem from the fact, not only from the fact that people do not speak different languages, or not. This is the main problem. but they use them in a different way on the basis of their cultural values and politeness strategies, which form their culture-specific communicative style. Can we provide our students with instructions on how to behave in a particular situation? I'm afraid not. Not only it is possible to describe all the possible situations that they might encounter, but also to anticipate them. So we have to go to choose another way. We should talk not about the individual characteristics and behavior stereotypes of the British, Russians, Spanish, Germans, and so on, both verbal and non-verbal, but to talk about the dominant features of their behavior, which together form their culture-specific communicative style, which can be defined as type of communicative behavior shaped by culture and consolidated by tradition. It becomes apparent in the choice and preference of particular strategies and means of communication, both verbal and non-verbal. As it is well known, style is always associated with the choice. So we will talk about the style of language. It's the choice and organization of linguistic resources in the process of speech or in the writing of a text, etc. Analyzing the style of communication, one should speak not only about the choice of means of communication, but also the choice and preference of communication strategies, which in turn determine this choice. So this choice is not free. It has a socio-cultural nature, and it is predetermined by the type of culture, the specificities of the socio-cultural relations and values. The principle of selection is not in the language itself, but outside of it, in the organization of society and the type of behavior required from a person in a typical situation. So the basis for the description of this communicative style, they can be various. So it might be a way of expressing communicative intentions, direct or indirect, subject-object orientation, the degree of emotionality, expressiveness, the degree of informativeness, the volume of the text, the aim of the communication, whether it is to convey something or to maintain a relationship, the degree of formality in communication, and many others. So, as you see, these can be diverse parameters related to the sociocultural, axiological, sociolinguistic, psycholinguistics, linguistics, also paraverbal, non-verbal, including proxemic, kinesic, tactile characteristics, and many others. I don't have time here within the framework of this presentation to to give analysis to all the characteristics which were pointed out through the very broad conducted research, but some of them you can see there. So the contrastive analysis of the English and Russian communicative behavior in different communicative contexts, in different speech acts, allowed to point out these general dominant characteristics, which you can see on the slide. So English style can be seen as more distant, non-imposing, indirect, implicit, form or manner-oriented, hearer-oriented, person-oriented, emotive or instrumental in the terms of William Budikunst, and there are much more characteristics. And Russian is, that you can see, is a little bit different. And so here I took just the situations concerning with negative politeness, but if we took positive politeness or other contexts, we also can see that there are interesting general dominant characteristics which, how to say, summing them up, we can see that the style of English and Russian communicative behavior in different. Here I have some examples, some linguistic evidences of these different characteristics, which you might be interested to see. There are also examples, just a couple of examples from different speech acts, but you will also notice that it is in request, in invitation, in where else? In offering and in expressing disagreement. This is the most typical way of the Russian behavior. Of course, there are varieties, a lot of varieties, but I'm talking about what is the most typical, and you can see the difference. So, and this stylistic variation is typical also for other stylistic features as well, and this is no an accident. A style is known to be formed under the influence of extra-linguistic factors, those phenomena of extra-linguistic reality in which communication takes place. So the most important extra-linguistic factor in the ethnocultural communication style is the type of culture in which it is taking place. So the distinct features of each culture predetermine how the speakers express their thoughts, clearly or with ambiguity, in a concise manner or descriptively, whether they observe distance in communication or neglect it, whether they they feel free to express emotions or they prefer to restrain themselves, and so on and so forth. So what is characteristic of one culture can often be unacceptable to the other. That is why the well-known postulates formulated by Fulbrights, the individualists or low-context cultures in terms of Edward, as well as the rules of politeness put forth by Leach, may not be the same, may not to the same extent be applicable to the collectivist high-context cultures, in particular the Russian culture, because this type of culture is determined by other communication features and forms and communicative values and forms a different style of communicative behavior. Therefore, it is necessary to study it from the point of view of culture. So, in a general way, an explanation of the culture-specific communication styles can be carried out in the following sequence, which you can see on this slide. For example, for Russian students learning English, the teacher should start by explaining that the British culture is an individualistic culture where it is necessary to maintain considerable distance. This is one of the main parameters of culture where the autonomy of the individual is highly valued. To express this, in English have special word, privacy, which does not exist in Russian, and not only Russian language. And intrusion into their privacy is a gross violation of the norms of behavior. To comply with this distance at the communicative level, there is a well-designed set of conventional strategies, so we should go to these politeness strategies, that ensures that the other party recognizes the independence and personal autonomy. These negative politeness strategies are aimed at keeping distance, creating hedges in order to demonstrate respect for the other. And the regular usage of these strategies makes the English style, as I have already said, indirect, implicit, non-imposing, highly ritualized, theory-oriented, and form-oriented, and so on. So these characteristics largely reflect British communicative values and match the Anglo-Saxon's cultural tradition. The Russian style, due to the specificities of its culture, has other characteristics. In the same way, the teacher should explain other features from the point of positive politeness strategies. And of course, if the English teacher, in England, if the Russian language is taught, so the teacher should start other way. So this is another type of culture. People have different values, so just being so intrusive, demand, and so on, they don't mean to be rude. They just want to show solidarity, involvement, the interest in the speaker, and so on and so forth. So an understanding of the salient stylistic features allows us to formulate some communication rules for the students, but also grammar of communication, to help them for the correct communication. So such recommendations may be specified. So here you can see some of the recommendations. Yeah, they can be specified. That I do it in my class with my students. Can be specified for particular situation or for particular speech acts. So they might be more specific, but this is kind of guideline. Yeah. This recommendation how to behave, how to use the English language properly, and not to use just English words, but to use them in a Russian way. So these rules can help in giving a better understanding of the norms of English communicative cultures, making the behavior of the person or the other culture more predictable. So to sum up, I would like to note that the description of culture-specific communicative styles from my point of view, is a very relevant theoretical problem which has a great pedagogic value. This approach can be applied as a model for systematizing and describing culture-specific differences of other languages, including different types of discourses, interpersonal, academic, political, and others. It has a great practical value as it can be used in the language pedagogy for developing new methods of systematic and effective teaching of foreign languages with a particular focus on intercultural communication. The knowledge of culture-specific communication style shows the students the logic of the differences of communicative behavior of the people of other cultures. It gives students orientation on how to use the target language and understanding of why they should act in a particular way. Thus, it makes the process of learning a conscious exercise and contributes to overcoming stereotypes, to better understanding between people from different cultures.
Thank you very much, Professor Tatiana, for the challenging presentation.